I'll call the meeting to order at 7:03. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Allred,
Here.
Mr. Andreessen, Mr. Fell, Mr. Hopkins, Ms. McFarland,
Present.
Ms. Sims, and Ms. Yu.
Here.
All right, so it looks like we have a quorum. Any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
And do we have minutes to approve?
We do not. Those are still in progress.
Okay, that's what I thought. Nothing on the agenda. Okay, do we have any communications?
Yes, since the packet went out, we received one communication that was emailed out to you by Mr. Ricci from Donald Aikman, who is in support of the rezoning request on University Avenue that we'll be hearing tonight.
All right. And we have one continued public hearing. That's plan case number 2468T23, an application by the Urbana Zoning Administrator to amend the Urbana zoning ordinance to allow more than one residential building on any lot zoned for multifamily use. That's going to be continued to the next regular meeting.
That's correct.
Right. Old business, no. Which brings us to our new public hearings. So, looks like the first one, plan case number 2469 SU23, an application by 1919 Architects on behalf of the Housing Authority of Champaign County for a special use permit to allow a renovation of Steer Place Apartments at 1202 East Harding.
Dustin, I think you're reading an old agenda.
Am I? I have this on the agenda as continued to the May 18th meeting.
Oh, there was a revised one. I'm sorry. I have the one that was on the website. My apologies.
All right.
Continue with that.
Yes, this is the revised agenda.
Sorry about that.
Got me scared there. I got
Yeah.
my
Oh,
emails in the
no
wrong
worries, no
place or
worries.
something. Okay, 1202 East Harding Drive, a property in the Southeast Urbana Overlay District. This case will be continued to the May 18th, 2023 regular meeting of the Urbana Plan Commission, which brings us to tonight's new business. Plan case number 2470M23, an application by Sharon Schaefer to rezone the parcel at 714 East University Avenue from its current split zoning of R3, single and two-family residential, and B1 neighborhood business to B3 general business. And it's all yours, Mr. Ricci.
Okay, and as Marcus is getting set up, before he begins, I wanted to give a heads up. I'm going to jump in when he's talking about the rezoning criteria, or in particular number 8. So I had added some things in the editorial process that in hindsight I don't think really makes sense, so I'm going to jump in when he's talking about those to sort of amend the recommendation for that criteria only.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Plan Commission. Sharon Schaefer requests to rezone 714 East University Residential from its current split zoning of R3 and B1 to rezoning the entire parcel as B3 general business. The property has been the location of Schaefer's sanitary waste hauling service for over 60 years. The current use is currently legally non-conforming within the current zoning designation. The proposed zoning change would make the current use legally conforming and would also allow other uses permitted in the B3 general business zoning district in the future. This request does not align with the comprehensive plan, although it satisfies the majority of the rezoning criteria. Therefore, staff recommend an alternate to the request to rezone to B3 general business and instead recommend a rezoning of the entire parcel to B2 neighborhood business arterial. The site is approximately 15,000 square feet located at the northwest corner of East University Avenue and Ash Street. The west half is zoned R3 and was the site of a single-family home until 1973 when it was demolished. The east half is zoned B1 neighborhood business and has been the location of Schaefer Sanitary Waste Hauling since the 1950s. Here on the map, we'll blow it up for you a little bit. This is the land use map. This is kind of an infrastructure use in purple here at the subject property. It's surrounded by residential usage. The Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District complex is to the north. That's also listed as an institutional use. The National Guard Armory complex is to the northwest. CUMTD is travel use complex, that's to the south, with Emulsicote to the south of it. So it's a little spot of commercial use in a bigger spot of residential use inside some commercial and industrial and institutional usage. Okay. The adjacent properties on the north side of University Avenue are zoned R3. And the property across University Avenue is zoned IN1 light industrial. Nearby properties are zoned R3, IN2 heavy industrial, and CRE conservation, recreation, education. It's interesting to note that the UCSD Sanitary District and the National Guard Armory are both zoned CRE. The 2005 Comprehensive Land Use Plan shows this area as, well, gosh darn it. Let's pop out of here. Document. That was the incorrect map, so I'm glad I brought everything else. If you look in your packets, let's see here. Staff report. Okay. This property and the residential areas around to it have a future land use designation of residential. The property to the south has a future land use of heavy industrial. The properties to the north and west of this parcel have a future land use of institutional, and it starts moving over into regional business to the far northwest. A little further south, you get into a central business future use next to some residential use. So yes, this property has a future land use designation of residential. The applicant plans to relocate the waste hauling business to another location and wants to have a family member relocate an existing auto detailing business to the site. Auto detailing is not listed in the table of uses of the Urbana zoning ordinance. The zoning administrator has determined that auto detailing would be most similar to a personal service category of use, such as dry cleaning or pet care or grooming. This would be permitted by right in the B2 neighborhood business or in the B3 general business zoning districts. The property was originally 2 lots, each containing a house. Back then, to allow a garage to house the sanitary trucks to be built without the requested industrial rezoning in 1961, the city required him to replat the two lots into a single lot. The east half of the lot was later rezoned to B1 neighborhood business, and that was first noted on the 1970 Urbana zoning map. The 1985 certificate of occupancy lists the use as a Illini sanitary, garage, and office, legally non-conforming use. So it is recognized by the city as a legally non-conforming use. This non-conforming status, though, would prohibit expansion of the current use or a change to any other use not permitted in the B1 for the east lot half or R3 for the west lot half zoning districts. So the current situation's pretty restrictive for not only the future uses, but also the current use. Rezoning the entire lot to the requested B3 zoning district would allow auto detailing on the entire property. It would also bring the existing use into legal conformity, but it would also expand the number of allowable uses to include things that might not be desirable in a residential neighborhood. If you look at, I think, Exhibit E, that was a comparison of the uses that are permitted in the R3, B1, B2, and B3 districts. You'll note that in the R3 zoning district, there are 11 permitted uses in that district, 6 conditional and 6 special uses allowed. In the B1 zoning district, which is what the east half is, there are 31 permitted uses, 27 conditional and 11 special. In the B2 zoning district, there are 70 permitted uses, 19 conditional and 3 special. And in the B3 zoning district, there are 117 permitted uses, 14 conditional and 6 special. So there's a big jump in the number of uses and scales of use that are allowed in the B3 zoning district. The B3 zoning would also not align with the 2005 comprehensive plan, which identifies the future land use for the property as residential. The staff report defines what that is given in the comprehensive plan. Given that, staff believe that since the site is in a residential neighborhood, it would be more appropriate to consider rezoning the entire lot to B2 or to B1 neighborhood business, with B2 being preferred since University Avenue is an arterial street. Either of those zones would allow auto detailing and other lower intensity businesses while prohibiting higher intensity businesses that might not be suitable for the neighborhood. Getting into, yes. Oh, okay. Getting into the rezoning criteria, we look at 8 total criteria from the LaSalle National Bank and the Sinclair Pipeline cases. The first one is the existing land uses and zoning of the nearby property. Many of the uses in the proposed B3 district would be compatible with the existing land uses and zoning of the nearby property. Given the small size of the lot, many of the higher intensity uses allowed in the B3 district would not be feasible. Although the property is bounded on 3 sides by residential, the CU Mass Transit District and Amalsacote are across University Avenue, and the UCSD complex and the Illinois National Guard complex are both less than 500 feet away. This criteria should weigh in favor of the proposed rezoning. The second criteria is the extent to which property values are diminished by the restrictions of the ordinance, meaning the zoning ordinance. As I mentioned, both the R3 and B1 zoning designations greatly restrict the number of permitted uses on the property, and the fact that each zoning district applies only to half of the property compounds the restriction. Although the R3 district allows a single or 2-family home on the west half of the lot, the B1 district requires a conditional use permit for that same use on the east half of the lot. Conversely, the B1 district on the east side allows a garden shop or a bakery, while the R3 district prohibits almost all business uses. The current split zoning prohibits any expansion or rebuilding of the current legally non-conforming waste hauler building should it be significantly damaged. All of these restrictions very likely reduce the value of the property, as the current values of the proposed use and adjacent properties likely already reflect the presence of the waste hauler service since it's been there for 60 years. It's likely that rezoning the property to a district that would allow that use and other businesses would likely not result in substantial reductions in neighboring property values. This, of course, is speculation, which is what we are being asked to do. This criteria should then weigh neutrally or in favor of the proposed rezoning. The third criteria is the extent to which the ordinance promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. The legally non-conforming status of the existing waste hauler service would allow it to continue indefinitely. The proposed B3 zoning district or the B2 or B1 district would allow the property owners to convert that use to something that may bring more beneficial goods or services to the neighborhood and community in general, such as an auto detailing business or other business that could be sustained on this relatively small parcel. This criteria should weigh in favor for the proposed rezoning. The fourth criteria is the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed on the individual property owner. The public gains some benefit from having a waste hauler nearby, although the applicant plans to relocate the service, not terminate it, so the public would not likely completely lose that benefit. Of course, there's no guarantee that this will happen in the future. The public would likely benefit from many of the uses allowed by the proposed rezoning. On the other hand, the property owner would suffer a significant hardship if they were not able to replace or rebuild or make substantial repairs to the legally non-conforming business they have operated for over 60 years. They would also face a significant hardship when selling the property, as the current split zoning does not make the property attractive to future owners. This criteria should weigh in favor of the proposed rezoning. The fifth criteria is the suitability of the subject property for the zoned purposes. As I've already mentioned, the property is likely to be suitable for many of the uses in the B2 or B3 zoning districts, depending on the size and scale that would be required. The property is in one of Urbana's oldest, most well-established neighborhoods, and the 2005 comprehensive plan designates the area's future use as residential. Some uses allowed in the B3 district or B2 district would require a conditional or special use permit, which would allow oversight of the operations by the Urbana Zoning Board of Appeals. This should weigh neutrally or in favor of the proposed rezoning. The sixth criteria is the length of time the property has been vacant as zoned. This does not really apply because the property has not been vacant. If the proposed rezoning is not granted, the existing waste hauler could operate indefinitely until the building needs more than minor repairs. After that time, the use would have to change to one permitted by the split zoning or stop operations, and then the property would eventually become vacant. Granting the proposed rezoning would increase the number of uses permitted on the property and could reduce the potential for vacancy in the future. This criteria should weigh neutrally or in favor of the proposed rezoning. Stepping into the Sinclair criteria, the community's need for more of the proposed use. The applicant requests a rezoning to allow for an auto detailing service. There are similar uses in the region, but not within the immediate vicinity, indicating a potential market. East University Avenue is a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial uses, so it may be a good location for the proposed use. The proposed zoning would allow for commercial uses in general, which better aligns with the zoning and land uses in the surrounding area. This should weigh neutrally for the proposed rezoning. Okay.
And then for number 8, so it says the care to which the community has planned its land use development. Essentially, if you look at your staff report, the first half of that is really all that should be included because like I mentioned at the beginning, I added some sort of editorial that I think is a bit speculative that probably doesn't have any business in here. So essentially, the 2005 comprehensive plan says that this area should be residential future land use. Even though there's been commercial use there for over 60 years, the comprehensive plan which was well thought out and well planned, says this area should be residential. So this criteria should weigh against rezoning to a business use. Back to you, Marcus. Or Lou. Well, I guess we'll wait.
Can you clarify briefly what you've deleted? Because I'm
Oh,
missing
yes,
something
yes,
that I
yes.
thought was pretty important.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So in the memo, let's see. So I added this part that said, there are other areas that are similar to this one that were called out with special text. I'm thinking particularly in my neighborhood along East Main Street over here. There's a lot of businesses along there, and the comprehensive plan says the future land use here should be residential, but it has some overlaid text that says we should promote businesses or work to, I'll just pull it up. Hold on a second. Yeah, I mean, and. Mm-hmm. No, all I'm saying is, yeah.
It's a related question, and I want to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, this piece was just, I had assumed that the lack of description about this area, since it does include this business, I had assumed that that lack indicated perhaps we didn't consider this area as well as we should have. But just because we didn't say anything about it doesn't mean we didn't give it full consideration and say, this should be residential. So I apologize for the speculative, speculative text, but I'm retracting that.
And for those of you that might be interested, Mr. Hopkins was referring to the text in the comprehensive plan that defines what residential is, and some places actually call out urban pattern and discuss the urban pattern of development. And one of the figures in there does show, the West Urbana, historic East Urbana King Park neighborhood as examples, and there is a little red spot of commercial in this otherwise residential area. Not that that notation necessarily applies to this area because it wasn't specified in the comprehensive plan as that, but that is some of the examples of residential that the comprehensive plan does talk about. Okay. So overall, the request meets the criteria for a zoning map amendment. 3 criteria weigh in favor of the request, 3 criteria weigh in favor or are neutral, 1 weighs neutrally, and 1 weighs against the request. Public input, staff published a legal notice in the News Gazette, also sent letters to neighboring property owners, notifying them of the request, and posted a public hearing sign on the property. After this report went out, we did receive 1 email in support of the request from a neighbor of the property. The findings are summarized in the staff report. I'll just give you highlights. The proposed rezoning to B3 would not be compatible with the residential future land use designation by the comprehensive plan. The proposed rezoning is compatible with the industrial zoning districts to the south and CRE district to farther north and east, and may be incompatible with the residential zoning district to the immediate northeast and west. The Plan Commission, we'll look at some pictures. This is a picture of the site looking northwest at the corner of Ash and East University. And the top row of 3 pictures is looking southward towards CUMTD and Emulsicote a little further to the southwest and some of the other businesses there. And the bottom picture is looking north up Ash Avenue towards the garages and houses that outline both sides of Ash Street. The Plan Commission has the following options in Plan Case 2470, M23, to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation to approve the rezoning request, to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation of denial of the rezoning request. based on the evidence that we presented, and staff recommends that the Plan Commission recommend an alternative to the request to rezone to B3 General Business and instead recommend a rezoning to B2 Neighborhood Business Arterial. The memo goes on to talk about we are consulting with our legal counsel to see if Plan Commission can recommend an alternative.
Yeah, and frankly, it's because we rarely do this. So I just wanted to make sure, and when I looked in the zoning ordinance, I couldn't find anything definitive. But our legal counsel did say the zoning ordinance gives Plan Commission the authority to make recommendations on amendments to the zoning ordinance, which a map amendment or rezoning, as we call it, is an amendment. It does not limit the Plan Commission to the requested rezoning. So you can make a recommendation to an alternate zone. So I just wanted to clear that up.
So in that being said, staff recommends that Plan Commission recommend an alternate zoning amendment of B2 Neighborhood Business in Plan Case 2470 M23. That is the end of the report, and I'm happy to answer questions. The applicant, Sharon Schaefer and Russ Schaefer, are here to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ricci. Are there any questions for staff? Mr. Hopkins?
It's unclear and in one sense doesn't matter, but would any of these rezonings result in the current use being conforming?
I think the B3.
Yes. Yeah, a rezoning to B3 would make the current use conforming. As is the case, many times we don't actually have waste hauler as a use in the zoning ordinance. The nearest similar use would be a towing service, which is allowed by right in the B3 zone.
And also conditional or whatever in B2? Or am I wrong?
I believe you're right. I'll take a look.
I can't remember. I guess, no.
No, I stand corrected. Actually, a towing service, which is the most similar use, is only allowed by special use permit in B3
Yeah, okay.
So as
and
long,
not allowed in B2. So it would continue, if it's rezoned to B2, it would continue to be a legally non-conforming use.
Okay, and assuming the current applicant's plan is carried out, if it becomes an auto detailer, the non-conforming use goes away. That is, it cannot be brought back,
Correct.
okay?
if they abandon it. Yes.
Right, okay. And the buildings are conforming or non-conforming to B1, B2, or B3? I'm guessing they are, but I haven't looked up. They meet the height limit, looking at them.
Mhm.
I'm guessing they meet any setback limits. I can't think of anything else.
I'm not sure.
FAR is 1.5, I think. FAR is 1.5.
Yeah, and on the two lots, they meet the FAR, so,
It looks like it would, but we can make sure
Well-
we know that.
yeah. I'm just,
Pointing things out.
I'm trying to keep in mind that we are not approving a use change, we are approving a zoning change.
Right.
And what changes is the zoning ordinance that applies, not the occupancy permit.
And that being said, then if it did get rezoned to B3, the existing use would be illegally non-conforming because it had never received a special use permit. And so if they wanted to expand it or repair
Whatever.
it beyond,
Okay. I'm going to assume that
repairs would
that's
require that.
not going to be an issue, but
Right.
it could be. Okay.
Other questions? I had a question, Mr. Ricci. So, in staff's analysis of the LaSalle criteria, for Was that based on, it's a little confusing to me because it goes back and forth at times. Was it based on the rezoning, the request from the petitioners to rezone to B3, or was it based on the proposal that has been suggested as an alternative from staff to rezone to B2, or a mix of the two?
It was primarily based on the request to rezone to B3, and only when I specifically stated and B2 that it varied from the only B3 discussion,
Okay, thanks. And then,
which,
And-
I'm sorry, was not the best way to do that.
and then in the memo, when it mentions, in one of the criteria, talking through what uses that might not be compatible if it were rezoned to B3, it suggests that some of those might not be an issue because of the size of the lot. What uses were those? Was there something in mind that you had in mind in particular with that, or? Because some other uses that seem kind of not compatible to me are not necessarily things I think of as being restricted by size.
Farm equipment sales and service. I mean, you could put in probably a small tractor shop, but you're not going to get a combine on there. Shopping center general, might be able to get a 2 or 3 storefront on there.
Okay,
There are a lot of things that could fit in there. It would just be of a smaller scale.
okay. Okay, that's good, thanks. Last chances for staff? No? All right, thanks, Mr. Ricci. Okay, so I'll go over the rules for the public hearing. The petitioner can now address the, sure,
Sorry, similar to that question, not doing B3, but going with the recommended neighborhood use, are there businesses that would make sense for that size that would be restricted with the B2 that we should be aware of? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, could there be like a, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a business that they might be interested in.
That
That-
you would be worried about?
Yeah, that we would be, that the rezoning could end up making them non-compliant with. I mean, I know what the plan is, but, you know, as they grow, I mean, another 60 years, I guess I just wonder if the B3 is I know we're worried about B3 being too big, but I also wouldn't want to choose a zoning that would be too contracting.
I don't think that I have any that I professionally am concerned about.
I had one other question. I don't know if this is the time to ask it or not, but do you know if the petitioner is amenable to the alternative rezoning?
I will defer to the petitioners on
Okay,
that.
that's what I didn't know, if we should ask you guys or if we'll wait for hear from them.
I did not get a definitive answer, but I also did not ask them explicitly
Okay,
if they would be amenable to that.
good to know. All right, thank you. Okay, so going over the rules for a public hearing, we'll allow the petitioner to address the commission if they're interested. We can ask some questions. And then anyone in favor will be allowed to address the commission, followed by anyone who's opposed. Then at the end, if needed, the petitioner can address the commission again. Then we'll close the public input portion, discuss, and entertain a vote. So I'll invite the petitioner up to the table here. Sure. Yeah, and if you could just state your name when.
Sharon Schaefer. I own the property. It's actually been in my husband's family since the beginning. Like we tried to tell, we're actually from that neighborhood. My husband's family grew up there. We still know all the older people that still live there. which is only, as far as the people that occupy the houses are, the properties, there's probably only 5 or 6 original people that was there from the time that my husband was raised. We actually lived in a house when we first got married, down on the corner on the first property on University Avenue when you head into the blocks. And it's hard to step back. We have dealt with the neighborhood for all these years. We know them, we get along with the people, we've never had any problems. And what is happening now is we're going to stop having the waste hauling company there, period. And as long as we can get something that we can do something with. And then we're going to try to improve what it looks like, with maybe some fencing, some greenery, try to make it look more pleasing to the eye for the neighborhood. Most of the people come to us and ask us about things that they can do, and can we help with them with stuff? So it's not that we don't know the neighborhood or that we're a person that owns it but lives someplace else. We've lived there, we know how that whole area is. And I was sort of surprised when we came up here. We talked to Nick Olson, and we thought it was already commercial because on the Champaign County consortium map, it says we're commercial 3,000. And when I kept looking at them, I thought, oh my gosh. So I told my husband, I said, let's just go up and see what we've got to do to get this detailing shop in here. And we went up, Nick told us it was still split. So we just want to be able to do something with the lot. The way it is now, split like that, it's sort of a deterrent to what we can do with it, Our plans are not to have the garbage company there again at all. So we want to be able to do something that doesn't detract from the neighborhood, Our grandson does have a detailing shop in Rantoul, and he would like to come down. We would like to have our family member in it. We would like to be able to pass that lot on to our son, so we have to be able to have something that we can make money for our old age. We're getting there, or we are there. We want to have money for our old age, and this is one way we can do it. We have the property, he has a detail shop, we get rent from it, from having the property. Not rich, we're not rich, but, it just gives us something that we can do, not harm the neighborhood, Most of the time, my husband and I have been the ones that took care of the grass and all that kind of stuff around the property. So we'll still be involved with everything, So, that's up to you, but we're just saying honestly what we want to do with it. If there's any questions, we can answer.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. Any questions for Ms. Schaefer?
So the question, B2 allows the detailing shop and a lot of things similar to it.
That's B2 for both of the pieces, right? Well,
Right. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's clear that
yeah,
common zoning across the two parcels is
right.
crucial.
It would be fine with us as long as we can get the detailing shop in there and do the things we need to have a little family business there.
Okay, thank you. That was going to be my question, so
Thank you.
you beat me to it. All right, is there anyone in favor of the rezoning that wants to speak? Anyone opposed? Okay, if you could come forward and sign in and state your name.
Hi, my name is Mia Renna. I actually live in this neighborhood. I live 2 parcels over from this property. And I am happy to hear that the intent is to change what's currently there. Because my original intent in coming here tonight was to raise a lot of issues that I've had in the neighborhood just from the trash itself. There's been a major rodent issue. I am fortunate enough to have a privacy fence, and have the financial means to now repair that privacy fence, just because of the groundhogs. And I learned last summer the raccoon problem. I had a trail cam set up from a service that I hired who videoed the raccoons coming from that property over into my yard, despite having this fence. Many other of the neighbors don't have that. Additionally, the alley itself is riddled with trash, which I can only assume is also from that area, just because I don't think any of the neighbors themselves are just throwing things into there. And then speaking of elderly neighbors, I walk with one on occasion, and she can't even navigate the alley sometimes because of the condition it's in between the trash and the brush that's built up in some of the yards. So I'm glad that that's not on the table anymore. But my concern is with allowing a business to still occur there. I think this is a point that you brought up, is if this isn't the actual business that stays there, if something else comes in, or if this business fails, I mean, what's gonna happen to the lot after? I mean, just to note, there's already, within a 3-block radius, 2 other auto detailing shops and 2 auto washing stations, car washes. So I don't know how many more of these we need right in that center location, but that's neither here nor there. But when you're talking about the neighborhood itself, I don't know too many people actually use them for trash disposal, which again, I guess is a non-issue anyways. But we really are only like 3 blocks of residential community. There isn't that many of us, and we're kind of slammed in, as you saw on the map, a bunch of other businesses. So I'm not really sure why we need more right there. So I guess that's my piece. I don't really know what the proposal is. I mean, I would be more in favor, I think, for the rezoning into B2 rather than continuing on what's there. So I guess I stood up for the opposed, so I don't really know if I'm for or against. Ideally, I would appreciate it to be a residential area, but that might not be an option, but
All right, thank you, Ms. Renna. Are there any questions from the commission?
Question
Okay.
for staff. The alley is a city alley? It's on the map, so I assume it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I made note to look into that, because if it's a city alley, we should be maintaining it.
I needed help to help with mine. I needed a neighbor with specialized tools to help, and it was just filled with trash, and it was just really hard to get it out. But it's cleared now, but other neighbors are not like that.
But if it's a city alley,
Yeah, but the trash is still piled. Like, where's the trash all coming from? Raccoons. I don't know what the city's supposed to do about the raccoons, but.
All right, thank you for your comment. Would the petitioner like to address any of the comments? Or? Okay.
Actually, we've had that police out to our place a couple times on University Avenue there, because you have people that just come by and drop off stuff because they know we're a garbage company. And on Park Street, about the middle of the 2nd block, somebody come out up there and dumped like 12 bags of stuff. Our son called the police. They came out and looked in it. They found the address, and they went over there, and the people had to come and get the garbage back off. But we've had a truck, actually a farm implement tire so big it was taller than us, dropped off on the lot. I called the city about it, and they said, well, as long as they throw it on your lot, we have to get rid of it. But it's just, it's not us that's dumping this stuff in the alleys. That would be, that would do nothing for our business. I mean, we pick up people's garbage, and we pick up a few people's garbage in that area, but not everybody, and we're not the only people that run down those alleys. But you find that all the time, where we've got if our son can't even leave, like if he leaves the truck outside, he has to make sure the blade's down, because people will just come over and dump stuff in it. They don't want to pay for it, so they think, well, we can leave it here. But we don't dump stuff in alleys. We don't leave stuff, You know, if they've got trash, we have relatives that live up in the next block, and they say that, you know, they have garbage men that come in there late at night and dump containers, actual containers, you know, and it's not us, but it's, you know, for some reason, we would get the blame for it, but it's not us. And I didn't say the last time I was up here that because of what we had on the Champaign County, in fact, I need to talk to them about the taxing thing. They've been taxing us as a commercial lot, the whole lot, for many years. And, you know, so I told Russell, I said, my husband, I said, I thought I knew what the zoning was for here, and now when they come up saying it's this and this, we've been taxed for more than we should be paying for probably 40 years, you know, because we took over in like 85, close to 40 years. So, you know, but we're not, you know, if we have a garbage truck there and people drop stuff there on our lot, we have to take care of it and clean it up, but it's not our responsibility as far as the alleys. We don't dump it there. We pay horrible landfill bills. So it's not us, but that is not going to be there anymore. So, thank you. I don't know what else to say. Any questions?
No, thank you. So before I close the public input, I just want to ask again if there's anyone else that wishes to address the commission. All right. So if there's no one else, we'll declare the public input portion closed and go into a discussion, possibly entertain a motion to vote. So is there any discussion on the proposal?
D M23, I move that we send plan case 2470 M23 to the council with a recommendation for approval of a zoning change for both lots to B2.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Hopkins. Second? The second by Ms. McFarland. Is there any further discussion?
Just a point of clarification. So, and I should have it in front of me, but the B2 ordinance that is the staff recommendation for neighborhood with the caveat, with the neighborhood, am I right?
Yeah, neighborhood arterial.
Okay.
Mr. Hopkins?
I got to make a plug for our comprehensive plan. And this is partly because we had a discussion last time in our study session about, and guess who raised the point, about land use designations. And I think we learned two things. One is it was useful to have the notion of urban residential pattern. And second, the annotations are useful and they matter.
Thanks, Mr. Hopkins. All right, any further discussion? Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, let's start with Ms. Sims.
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins, Ms. McFarland,
Yes.
and Ms. Yu.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. Do we have a date for council for this one?
The 23rd, is that right? No,
20th.
20th.
20th, it will go to committee of the whole.
20th Committee of the Whole, and then 27th would go to council for approval.
All right. So it looks like we have no new business. Public input, audience participation. Is there anyone who wishes to address the Plan Commission for 4 minutes uninterrupted on a topic of your choice? If so, please come forward and sign in. No takers? All right. That was extra credit. Yeah. Do we have a study session? Or do we have a staff report?
We do not.
Do we have a study session?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. We are adjourned at 7:53.